Walt Kelly once famously said, "We have met the enemy, and he is us." The reality is, often our biggest battles are with ourselves. Let's have ourselves a pocket sized pep talk because, to some degree, we all face this foe, and we're going to talk about ways to battle back.
A Pocket Sized Pep Talk, the podcast that can help energize your business and your life with a quick, inspiring message. Now, here's your host, Rob Jollis.
Today's guest, Andrea Mind DeWitt, is an author, speaker, and life coach who helps others see and step into their power, their potential, and ultimately their truth. Her book, Name, Claim, and Reframe: Your Path to a Well-Lived Life, is a culmination of the wisdom she's developed to help her coaching clients navigate life with a more attuned vision. Andrea is a certified professional coach through the Coactive Training Institute and the International Coaching Federation. Glad to have you with us and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Rob. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I'm happy to hear you too. And I want to tell you, it's normally I want to hear about the book, and I promise you we're going to talk about that book. But there was something that triggered me in your bio, and that's the words, that collection of wisdom from working with others. And when you mentioned that, I sort of said, okay, I've got a kindred spirit here. So I'm going to ask you a different question. I'm going to ask you how this book found you.
That's such a great question. And I think I pivoted from a 32-year career in education, everything from teaching school, grammar school, to teaching at the college level. And I pivoted in my early 50s to go back to school. And I think that many of your listeners, anybody, all of us go through times when we question what we're doing. And I did. What I was doing didn't match up with my core values. And so I am proof that it is never too late and you're not too old to live your dream. And this book was a journey for me. I did name, claim, and reframe myself into a well-lived life, the one I'm living now. And I wrote it, Rob. This is the best part about COVID. I wrote it at the very beginning of COVID. I decided I had no coaching clients because everyone pulled back. No one wanted to spend money on coaching. And I said to my husband, okay, the universe is gifting me time. And so I hired a developmental editor, Kim O'Hara, who I had the idea, and I was an academic writer, but she really helped me put it into a book form. And I banged this thing out in 9 months and had a publishing contract within 3 months of writing the book proposal. I mean, it kind of was enchanted, like the universe wanted me. I mean, why not have the speaker be a 60-year-old lady with dry skin? I mean, I'm the perfect person because I've lived and my life, and a well-lived life. And my publisher, Hatherley Press, Andrew Flack, he and I had this conversation. He goes, well, a well-lived life, that's so vague. What does that mean, Andrea? And I said, well, a well-lived life is not perfect, but it means that you know exactly where you are. You've taken your power back gracefully, and you really are living in your truth. And that's what this book is about.
Beautiful. And I've always been a fan of the thought that the easiest way to be believed is to tell the truth. And as trite as that sounds, it's very important. So when I speak to an author, and I without knowing your story, I knew your story, because as soon as I saw the coaching clients, et cetera, I thought, oh, she's living success, failure, and she's learning the difference between the two of them. I mean, it's coming at her real fast. And but we have to live that ourselves to be an authentic author. We can't say, I hear life is challenging. My life has been a cakewalk, but so it doesn't surprise me. But to me, that's what makes a great book. We have to. It's one of our children when we're done with it. I mean, it's a part of us.
It really is. And, I'm going to be honest with you, Rob. The hardest thing for me was to get honest. I mean, the top part of my book says your power and your power and your potential really starts with your truth. And when I was writing, my developmental editor, Kim, said, Andrea, you have to get naked here. I mean, you're a good writer. You can write academically. You can, spew out structures, but people are interested in the story because they see yourself in the story. And I think that what I did right with this book is that I was honest with myself first, and I told stories that everybody has. Everybody had a fight with their sibling. Everybody has an aging parent. Everybody has a boss or a coworker that you had an issue with, or a challenge, a challenge with your child or your husband. And I used stories from my own life and the stories with my clients, and came at it from lots of different directions, and then used visuals because I am a teacher at heart. And so, no, my goal really was, my why for the book, Rob, was to make coaching accessible to everybody, because not everybody can afford to hire a coach.
Right.
And so from what I'm hearing, I achieved that, and people feel seen, and I'm giving them tools to really navigate life's challenges so they can respond to adversity instead of react to it.
Right. Is this your first book?
This is my first book.
Oh, well, welcome to the club.
I
I'll tell you, there's
know.
something about.
You've written many books, haven't you?
Oh, yeah, I don't talk about books on my show. I try not to, because this is about you. But thank you. But I will tell you that what you learn when you're writing a book is, yes, you get very truthful, but it's intimate. There's an intimacy to it, and it's a little bit like fishing. When you talk to somebody who's been fishing, and I'm not a fisherman, so one of the things people naturally say is, "Hey, did you catch anything?" And a fisherman will smile, because it's kind of the wrong question. It's the joy of fishing. So yes, maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but that's not why they're fishing. And so, just to remind you that as an author, that I'm thrilled that people are loving that book. I'm sure it's a wonderful book. I've looked it over. You can find it on Amazon, folks. You're going to find it. You're going to buy it. You're going to read it, and you're going to review it. So, and we're going to say that a couple more times. But I want to tell you something. You went fishing. The fact that you ground out that book, and you weren't afraid to go hunting for a publisher, and you got that publisher. You already been fishing. You're playing with house money now, because you got your truth out there. And don't forget that. It's important.
It is important. And it is important, Rob. Thank you for that reminder. I do also feel, because there's an altruistic piece of me, that this is that name, claim, and reframe worked for me. And I wanted to give people those tools.
Yeah.
And it was really an awakening in my early 50s of a better way through. I mean, I call myself a warrior in recovery, because I talk about, we all, men and women, or however you identify, have masculine leadership traits and feminine leadership traits. And I found, when I really was honest with myself, I realized I had been leading with more masculine leadership traits. And sometimes instead of showing, which are wonderful, you're courageous, you're focused, you're a problem solver, you're a protector. But sometimes if I was triggered, I would show up as controlling and intimidating and closed-minded. And so I got really curious about, if I really want to be the best leader I can be, what's underneath my armor? And that's really where the excitement happened, when I started looking more at those more natural, feminine, above the line traits.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that, because I was thinking about some of the questions I'd ask you, and I was a little puzzled on the feminine, masculine. But when you just said that, it made me smile, because in the world of sales, where I tend to live, and that's a lot of my audiences that I speak in front of them, I remind women that, unfortunately, a lot of the people they're seeing sell are men. And so, in your words, if I've got this right, in a sense, they're grabbing masculine traits as to how they sell. And P.S., these aren't good traits. In other words,
some of them are, but
Yeah.
not all. It's just about identifying which ones work. Let me just say, I always start with this, is that the best negotiators use both natural above the line masculine traits because they know what they want. They have a vision, they've got
Right.
goals,
Right.
but they start off with natural feminine leadership traits. So they listen,
Right.
they are receptive, they create sort of a very collaborative relationship. So they're already receiving the person that they're negotiating with more generosity and openness. And right there, those are feminine traits. And but both men and women have them. I mean, my husband's a really good negotiator, and I listen to him in his office, and I think, ooh, he's pulling in really, really, he's drawing them in. And then once he knows what they want, then he can go back and think, okay, wow, these are the things I want. Let's see if I can match. And it's this incredible toggling between those two that really creates the potent power of an incredible leader.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. One of the most pivotal, most important things a salesperson can do is, of course, ask questions and listen. And I shouldn't say, of course, because many of them struggle with that, but that's the foundation. But one of the keys is to not want to fix the problem they're hearing about, but rather hear more about the problem. And if you've ever, Dr. Gray worked on this, Men Are From Mars, Women From Venus. If you've ever want to see a more classic separation between the traditional, and that's what we're talking about, the traditional masculine, feminine, it sits right there. And so that's a classic of where I want to lean in and go, it's time. Now I'm going to use the words. It's time for the feminine side. You don't have to rush off and fix this. We need to hear more about it. They want to talk more about it. But it's not an instinct on the masculine side in sales. And that's where a lot of the mentors coming from.
Exactly. And I say, I mean, I grew up in a very masculine household. My father valued courage, athleticism, and steel equipment. And so I was
masculine.
Yeah, very masculine. But what happened was, I mean, and I was very successful and very focused and ambitious. But what would happen is when I would be threatened or triggered, I would show up with this, really very below the line, unsavory, prideful, controlling, closed-minded, intimidating mindset. And you don't make friends that way. And that's no way to lead. And when I started to think about, and my balance your response chart, which you can get on my website, Andrea DeWitt Advisors, you can upload it.
Don't go so fast. How do you spell that? What was that again? It went right by us. What was that?
Andrea, Andrea, DeWitt, DEWITT, advisors.com. And you can upload it. And it really stops you in your tracks, because when I go below the line and I think, okay, I'm starting to get controlling, or I'm being close-minded, I think, okay, I have the opportunity to choose again. And maybe underneath my armor, instead of being more masculine-minded, I'm going to pick curiosity. I'm going to think, okay, I'm going to ask a question. So help me understand what you're talking about, because it's hard for me to understand. So right there, or gosh, that idea, I'm going to be vulnerable with you. That idea kind of makes me nervous. Can you help me to see what you're talking about? I mean, right there, I'm being vulnerable. I mean, Brene Brown, that's, she built a whole empire.
Right.
There is resourcefulness here, and there is more. I love the receptivity. And what magically happens when we catch ourselves dipping into those unsavory, reactive leadership qualities is that we really are more in our truth. We're more balanced. We're more in integrity. We feel better. And we are really responding to adversity instead of reacting to it. And right there, you're in your power. You're not back on your heels.
Yeah.
And that's what was so provocative about this way of thinking.
Yeah. And I think you live this, but you can nod your head if you'd like. It's funny when we write a book and finally say, okay, I'm going to go 9 months. I'm going to put, some thousands of words together. Trust me, folks, we're learning as we're writing too. In other words, things start coming out of us because we're in this sort of this disciplined mode of really letting it free. And it's one of the most beautiful things about writing is how many times did you finish a chapter and go, I loved it. And I didn't know I was going in that direction, but that's where we went.
Well, what you're talking about, Rob, is learning of your inner magnificence. I mean, sometimes things would come out, and I'm
Yeah.
sure you've had that experience. I think, wow, that sounded really good. Did I really write that? It's almost like you're channeling this
Yeah.
incredible, you know, wisdom, but it's wisdom that has come from you when you're really truthful with yourself.
Yeah.
I will say too that part of writing a book, and I love that you really come from that author's perspective, and because I think everybody has a book in them. I think everybody has something to say, and it does take courage to write a book, but I ask for help too. In my book, I highlight a lot of thought leaders that help form, and I asked if I could use quotes from them, and it's just this, I mean, there are no original thoughts. I mean, we all stand on the shoulders of giants, and I love that I could be able to highlight other thought leaders too that inspired me. And when I was writing it, I was working with an incredible thought leader, Tanya Geisler, who wrote my foreword. And I got into the feedback chapter, and I said, "Oh, I missed some parts. Tanya, could you help me? Because I think there's some blind spots here." And so it was really incredible that I was able to shore up that chapter. I think feedback is one of the hardest things for so many of us, and I know for me it was. And that was a chapter that I was really able to shore up with the help of my own experience, and then asking for help, which is wonderful when you can pull in someone else's wisdom
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. I'm in the club. I struggle with feedback, and I know it.
Me
And
too.
I'm trying, but I will tell you that, the I had a book that was sent out by my publisher, and wanted to one of the readers, and the first line in there was, if I wasn't being paid, I wouldn't have gone past the first sentence. I wanted to throw up. And so I would just like to say, for we who struggle with feedback, that I wish there was a manual of how to give feedback. It would make
I
it a
have
little
a
bit
manual. Do
easier.
you want to do it with me right now, Rob? Let's do it.
I'm ready.
Okay.
I'm ready. I'm not afraid. I'm a little afraid. No, I'm not afraid. Go ahead.
Okay. Let's talk about this. So first of all, let me just say that feedback is really not about you. I mean, feedback is always about the person giving the feedback. So that person that wrote that not very nice review, that was really about their values and about what they care about. And so when you looked at what the person wrote, was there anything about that feedback that was helpful to you or that you can use going forward? Was there anything about it that was helpful to you?
No, and I'll tell you why, because I shut down, because I
Right.
decided I can't, there's no credibility to whatever follows here will not be credible to me. It was painful. And
So
I'm, yeah,
what I would say, and I don't know this, but what I would say, Rob, is that it sort of hooked you in a limiting belief that you might have about yourself. So you gave that person that gave you that not very good feedback more power because it hooked your inner critic or a part of you. What part did it hook in you? How did it hook you, or how did it, how did it sting?
uh, I, I felt mildly humiliated.
Yeah,
That again, these books are our children. People, we do the best. We raise them as well as we can. They go out and they live the life they're going to live. But someone was harming my child, and it bothered me.
exactly. So it felt like an attack. It felt
Mhm.
personal.
Yes.
So let's get out of it and gather the facts. This person that left, and we've all gotten nasty reviews. I've gotten them too. But this person that left this not very kind review,
Well,
do
let me just jump in real
they
fast
know
to
you?
clarify this real fast. This was a review that the publisher sent the manuscript out to be viewed by someone who's paid to
Okay.
read the book. So
Okay.
an Amazon review, for instance, we get what we get.
Right.
It is what it is. I hate that phrase, but this one felt a little more personal because this one was orchestrated by my
And your
publisher,
publisher.
and
Okay.
for someone who was actually doing this as a job, and I felt it was very unprofessional. Okay, I'll be quiet again.
So no, don't be quiet because I think that's important. So you
Mhm.
gave this this person, I mean, you gave them a lot of clout because they were being paid by your publisher to give their feedback about the manuscript.
Yes.
So right there, it's got more clout.
Mhm.
So let me ask you. So the feedback they gave you, if you were able to step back from it, was there anything in it that was helpful to you?
This is a podcast of honesty. I didn't get they had trouble getting past the first sentence, and I never got by the first sentence. I handed it right back, and I published another book with this publisher, and I said, I'm only signing the contract if you no longer send out manuscripts of mine to these paid readers of yours. And they said, okay. So they don't get feedback from readers on my manuscripts anymore. But no, I never went past the first sentence. I thought it lacked credibility. No matter what followed, it was not going to land with me. So, and maybe that was a mistake. But no, I decided there's no value to this.
I mean, Rob, I stand right with you because it is so hard to get feedback sometimes, especially from people that we think we should respect, like someone that is being paid to review something. But what if you step back from it and you didn't look at it? But I have found that if I step back from the feedback and separate my ego and look at it, I think, maybe there's something, maybe they were right. Maybe I wasn't as clear about that. So, hey, thanks so much for that feedback. But this other stuff that you told me about my book, I'm going to throw that out because that's not useful for the goals I have. And there's something about the sovereignty of taking your power back and saying, okay, thanks so much for that gift, but that's not helpful. I'm throwing that out. That helps you to take your power back in a resourceful way that you've separated the personalness out of it, because that person is a hired gun, right? They were. Yeah. They were a hired gun.
Yeah. In a sense, I want to be fair to you because I've gotten a lot of feedback in my life. I cherry picked the most obnoxious, ridiculous example, but I love where you're going because I'm going to play it back to you and tell you sort of an angle I go at when I'm mentoring and coaching and working with people. And that is, we can't be professional victims. I'm not a fan of it. Meaning, no matter what the feedback is, the moment we throw up our hands and say, it's all their fault, I didn't do anything, we're really missing an opportunity. And rarely is that not repeated over and over again. So now we're getting into a bad habit. Now, normally what I'm trying to do, and when I'm on my game, is to pull back and say, okay, Rob, you're not a victim. Now, that example, for instance, maybe seeing as I lost him on the first sentence, let's look at that first sentence. What can I learn from this? Because that's how I release my anger, quite frankly, is figure out the lesson, what I was supposed to learn from it, and then get it, as my dad would used to say, get it behind you, boy. I can get it behind me, but I got to learn from it before I can just throw it behind me. So that's more realistic of how I review feedback.
So what I'm hearing, which I love, and what if you'll stand in this, is you're owning up to it. Yeah. Okay, so maybe that first sentence wasn't written in a way that resonated with that one person, but I'm going to own that. I'm going to look at it and I'll read it again. Maybe I need to rewrite it, but if it still sits right with me, then I'm just going to stand and I'm going to own it. And that is not that person. It maybe isn't my audience. And I think that when we can release the people that aren't our people, that aren't our listeners, oh my goodness, we take our power back. Right there.
Yeah. And I think the magic word is you release it. I see people, I'm 13 years helping people in career transition, and it's usually an older audience. And, when the company's asked you to leave, when you've had a bad manager, people come in and they're trying to move forward. And at the same time, they're being held back by this anger and frustration, and they can't get rid of it. And it is one thing that I do coach to coach right now is I really spend time going, we have the only way to move forward is to sort of figure out this piece. So I know that manager was cruel and I know that they did these things. Tell me something that you learned from it. Tell me something that you would do differently next time. And when we get to, well, maybe I would at least check in with a bang. Now we got something. And now it is easier to cut that that ball and chain loose, but you can't just cut a ball and chain loose, and people drag these things around. So yeah, I see what you're saying. I see it when I'm mentoring people in career transition. And one last thing very quickly, but I'm a fairly dramatic guy. I'll sit down with somebody, and when I say tell your story, don't leave anything out, and I ask that question, what would you do differently? And they say nothing. I rather dramatically gather my things and say, I'll go get another person. There's a few other people. I'm sure they'll love working with you. Unfortunately, I can't help you. And that's when they go, wait, where are you going? And when I need an answer to the question, when we get there, it's a kind thing to do for ourselves when we
It
find
is.
what we need to own.
We have to own up to our part of any conflict or
Yeah,
anything that happens in our lives, because
right.
we were there. So we have
Yeah,
to own up. And maybe something happened and you had an altercation with someone, you were misunderstood, but you got
yeah,
to own that.
yeah,
And sometimes apologizing or saying, hey, I'm really sorry that you misunderstood what I had to say. Let me try again.
right.
Let me ask in a different way.
Yeah,
And sometimes, like you said, just about the people you were coaching, sometimes you're up against someone that is never going to see you in the way that you want to be seen. So you got to let that go.
right.
So you can choose again in
Yeah,
another forum.
yeah. But really, really valuable. Let's climb into the book a little bit.
Okay.
You talk about, and that's why I opened up, because it really resonated with me. The toughest critic we have, which is typically ourselves. Okay. Sometimes I refer to it as the bully in the brain. Okay. It's just, you're not good enough. You're not, look at you. You'll never get, I can't, I'm going to smack that bully. But how do we overcome that? How do we battle back? Because I can't smack the bully in the brain. I'll be smacking me. So give me some thoughts on that.
Well, I call the bully in the brain. I've never heard that. I love that,
I
Rob.
made
I
that
call
up.
it
Yeah.
the inner critic. Some people call it the gremlin, or
Right.
the saboteur. All of us have a bully in the brain or a inner critic. And I go into a lot in the book about this, because in order for you to take your power back
Yeah.
gracefully and strategically and resourcefully, you got to get a hold of that voice, because that's all it is a voice. It's
Yeah.
not part of you. It is a voice. We all have it, and you will all have it. But our inner critics show up usually when we're taking up more space, or stepping into a new role, or doing something new. And they're really there. And when I think about this, it helps me to understand what their motivation is. They're there to keep us safe from embarrassment, rejection, getting in over, doing something that we haven't done and we think we're going to make a huge mistake, fear, all those kinds of things. And when you hear that voice, you go, oh, that's my inner critic, or my bully in the brain. And you think, is that really true? For instance, being on a podcast, I have a bully in my brain who is a 20 something college co-ed. And she shows up every time I'm going to do a podcast. And she shows up and she's so nervous that I'm going to embarrass us and I don't know enough. And I notice that she shows up and I stop and I think, oh, she's here sitting on my shoulder. And I say to her, oh, you're here. Don't worry. I know what we're doing. And you're 20 and I'm 60 and I've written a book and I know you're worried, but I've got us covered. So I'd like you to leave, because you don't know all that I know. I know what I'm doing. So please leave. I mean, right there, I've separated my ego
Yeah.
from her. She
Yeah.
doesn't even know the fact. She has no idea I've written a book. She has no idea that I have, 45 plus years of experience doing this work. And so, I think if we really think about it, your bully in the brain or your inner critic is really does not have the facts. And so when you get really clear what the facts are, it's easier for you to release all their limiting beliefs
Yeah.
that really
Andrea,
aren't
you
true.
said something I think that's brilliant, actually. And I think it comes from your reframing, because I learned something really valuable here, that you quite naturally reframed it. Let's drop the bully. We'll go with the inner critic. Okay. Because a lot of times the bully in the brain are people that I'm working with that are really up against it, and they are being bullied by that inner critic. But I don't think the inner critic's always there to bully us. And you framed it as protecting. And that's incredibly valuable, because I think one of the things we have to realize is, you said, that 20-year-old, she's there, she's going to be there with you. You know, it reminds me real fast of, you ever see the movie A Beautiful Mind? Russell
Yes.
Crowe.
Yes.
It's a wonderful scene at the end of the movie where the person who's meeting him says, you know, do you still have these voices? Do you still have these people? And he says, yeah, they'll be with me forever, but I don't really listen to them all that much. And I think they're giving up on me a little bit too. There's a line similar to that. And boy, could I identify with that, because they're there, but when we don't give them as much power, they get a little quieter. They're still walking there, you know, and in that scene, you still see those people, but they're not really bothering with him at this point. They're just walking around with him, you know?
They're just
Yeah.
walking around. I mean,
Yeah.
I do this work with clients, and I have them personify
Mm.
the inner critic. I
Yeah.
had one client who, her inner critic was this, she was young, she was in her mid 20s, and her inner critic was Ursula from A Little Mermaid, that horrible, scary
Yes. The
purple
octopus, I
mean
think. Yeah.
lady that lived at the bottom of the ocean. And we together went and we confronted Ursula, and she was telling me what Ursula was saying to her, all the things she was saying. And I said to my client, this is really scary. Let's take her power away. And over the time, we started to sort of dismantle Ursula's
Right.
things that Ursula was saying. And once we did that, this client, I mean, it was this, I mean, because inner critics can be very scary and very powerful, but as she began to dismantle this inner critic's limiting beliefs, she was able to overcome it. It didn't mean that Ursula didn't show up, but Ursula got smaller and
Right.
sillier, and she noticed when she showed up. And that's really what it is. It's a practice.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that it stops. It continues. But when you are able to take your power back in a very strategic way by noticing it and separating your truth from the voice, you really can navigate scary things and know that it's there, really like an overprotective parent,
Yeah.
because it keeps you playing small and not
Right.
pushing the envelope. Anytime you do anything new, or courageous, your inner critic's going to show up. Your bully in the brain's going to show up. And so just notice it. I mean, I have a whole section in
Yeah.
my book about this. And I mean, when I work with clients, Rob, it's just the most incredible thing to watch people dismantle this voice that has just ruled them. And then they begin to rule the voice. And that's exciting.
That sounds exciting. Name, claim, and reframe your path to a well-lived life. I'm going to give you, it's a tough assignment right now, because I want you to kind of walk me through sort of the name, claim, and reframe process. But the tough part for you will be, can you do that in 2 minutes or less?
I can, Rob.
He's ready to go. Okay, good.
So name, claim, and reframe is a 3-part system.
Okay.
It works like this. You name or gain awareness of your pain point. What's causing you to react to adversity instead of respond to it? And then the next step is to claim actions that match up with your core values. When we know what our core values are, it's easier to see what we want and keep sacred what's most important. And then you cannot reframe until you've named and claimed. And then the reframe comes when you separate your ego. You're able to step back and see the situation from a new perspective and really look and say, okay, what's going to serve my goals going forward? And it's really a way to take your power back gracefully and live more in integrity. Name, claim, and reframe.
Look at that. Well under 2. Outstanding. Now let me ask you this: if I get the book, and is there a job aid? Is there a way to kind of help me in training? When when we have processes, we tend to create a job aid, which basically is something that we can lean on until this becomes muscle memory. Anything along that line to help us out?
Well, in my book, there are lots and lots of, I have exercises and things for you to do.
Good.
I also, if you go to my website, which I'm hoping you'll put in the notes,
I sure will.
AndreaDeWittAdvisors.com. You can upload the charts and things that I have in there. I'm also doing a workshop, a workshop that goes through the book, and we're developing a workbook that's going to be going along with it. And I'm in the midst of that workshop now, but I'm running another one in the fall. So people really want to take a deeper dive, they can join my workshop, and you can find information about that on my website.
Well,
So
let's spend 30 seconds on the workshop real fast.
Yeah.
1 day workshop, 2 day workshop. What are we looking at there?
It is a 9-week workshop.
Ooh.
It's a deep dive. And this is for
deep.
people that are seeking. These are for seekers. They've read the book, they're hooked. I started this week, Rob, and it was so amazing to hear what was resonating with people, because it's not my message anymore. Right. Now it's out there, and people are giving me information about what really resonates, where we need to dive deeper. And it's been an incredible way for me to really make this content even more accessible to everybody.
Is it virtual?
It's all virtual. It's virtual, and it's really fun. Plus you get access to me, the author.
Well, it was better than that. Okay.
What's better than that?
That's right. There you go. Well, good. I'm glad that you got a workshop on it, because I think whenever we deal with process behaviors, and I'm a big fan of process behaviors, there is that old saying, what we hear, we forget; what we see, we remember; what we do, we learn. And so I love that. It's why I was sort of scraping around with, is there a job aid? I mean, I want to learn this, and reading it is going to open the door. But a workshop, a 9-week workshop, meet once a week. How often is that workshop?
Once a week, and it's group coaching, and then you get access to my workbook, which I've written. My publisher and I are talking about doing. That's going to be a follow-up, but it's really a deeper dive. And again, it's an opportunity to get access to one-on-one coaching in a group setting, which is very rich.
Right.
I mean, it's pretty magnificent what happens in those group coaching communities, and I'm excited about what I will learn and what my participants will learn.
Outstanding. Good. Well, like I said, we'll have all that website information on our site as well. All right, let's a couple more questions for you, because I love this topic. It's something that I've kind of scraped around myself, but not like you. So you write about we're being triggered to react rather than respond. And when I saw that, I thought, on the surface, it sounds like the same thing to me. So where do I have that wrong? Walk me through that.
I'm going to start with an example. We were talking before we hit record. I am moving a loved one into skilled nursing, and I tend to go warrior if I don't catch myself. And so I was having a conversation with someone about his care, and I felt myself getting angry and controlling, and I was going warrior. And I thought, Andrea, you're going there, you're going below the line. What do you want to do? So I said to the person, you know what, I'm a little edgy. It's been a really long week, and I'm really worried about my father. Can I start again? Because I wasn't very nice in that last comment. And right there, I chose again to come back above the line. And I said, let me ask again in a nicer way. And I did. And I proceeded. And number one, I disarmed the person I was talking with, because they weren't talking to a warrior anymore. They were talking to someone that was curious, and they were talking to someone that was asking for another chance.
Right.
And you know what, Rob? I got everything I wanted and so much more. Plus, I was back in my power. I wasn't back on my heels. I wasn't angry, but I was back. I brought it back into more of a natural, I admitted my mistake. I'm sorry. Let me start again. And right there was this connection with the person I was talking to. Can you imagine what would happen if you were talking to someone at work and this happened? You were talking to your child and this happened, with your spouse. I mean, it's name, claim, and reframe, in this opportunity to choose again, to respond instead of react. We would really be able to take charge of really feeling much more balanced. And that's really what I mean by balancing your response.
Right. Well said. I'm getting it now because, I think, I know you're right about navigating conflict, and you've just sort of given us an example of, but you're right. There was a humility to that and a humbleness of just 20
Which is
seconds,
an
but
above the line feminine trait.
right,
I mean, I thought, gosh, because I'm scared of my warrior. I mean,
right.
because she's scary. I mean, I need her sometimes, but
Mhm.
she's. I mean, you don't need to go in with the sword and the shield. I mean, you're not
Right,
gonna. I mean, I needed this person's help.
right,
So I became the gentle warrior, and I looked underneath my armor, and what I found was this pretty resourceful lady that said, "Oh, let me start again. Can I try again?"
yeah,
And right, I mean, I think you really do disarm people when you you do admit, and because not enough people apologize.
right,
I mean, the
right,
person could have said no, you're mean, and hang the phone up on me. That was certainly a possibility. And
right.
I think it's more about really, I mean, your leadership starts with yourself. If you're going to be a good leader, you got to be truthful with yourself, and that's what this work is about.
Right. And you threw a word at us, a term at us that I saw in your book. You had to be a gentle warrior. Can you
Yes.
explain that to people? What you
I
mean by that?
will. I will. I really identify with the warrior archetype because I explained my upbringing, and I didn't want to give up my warrior because I need her. She's strong and she's visionary and she has all these incredible qualities. But underneath, a gentle warrior is someone that is much more integrated. She uses her above the line masculine, but she also looks inside her heart and in her truth to pull up resourcefulness and emotional intelligence and humility and attunement to really be her authentic self. And she's confident, but she also reads the room. Masculine's energy is more about doing, feminine energy is more about being. And when you combine both of those, you have a gentle warrior who really has a lot of sovereignty and grace and vision, but she has way more harmony. He or she has way more harmony in their life, and that's what a gentle warrior is. And you know what? As I have really gone through writing the book and then promoting the book and all the things I'm doing, I really am the gentle warrior, Rob, because it doesn't mean that hurricanes aren't going to blow through my life, but I know how to navigate them. And I know how to catch myself when I am threatened to be reactive, and I know what to do. And you can too. Any of us can. It's
Right.
it's really the power lies within you to be truthful with yourself.
Right. Well, and that's why we're going to grab this book because it's going to walk us through it, name,
Oh,
claim, and reframe your
and
path to a well-lived life.
Rob, you do know that we were on the Today Show.
Oh,
We
really? When was that?
we were right out of the gate on January 6th. We were chosen by Emily Giffen and the Today Show crew as the #1 motivational read for 2023. Right out of the gate. So
Wow.
we are feeling really excited about that. Proof that, I mean, that's proof, that's feedback that you want to take in, right?
You
Talk about
bet.
taking in good feedback. I'm going to stand in that light.
Well, a huge congratulations to you for that. And you're right. That doesn't, you got to earn that. That's terrific.
It
Well
is.
done. Well
Thank
done.
you, Rob.
All right, last question for you, and we'll wrap ourselves up here. Although I'm basking in your glowing right now of how nice that must what a wonderful moment that must have been. Uh, yeah, I'm smiling. A fun fact: I had a book once that I was in line to be on Oprah, and I was vetted. I was we were timing me out, doing all the things, and she retired. It was right as she was getting to retirement, but she hadn't announced it yet, so they were still lining up her agenda, and so I just sort of floundered on her agenda, but it's a claim to fame. I was on Oprah's agenda.
I mean, you can't see, I'm making a big O. I mean, Rob, I mean, I think that's something that you can really own that.
I,
And
I, I actually do. I don't think I've ever told anybody that because at first I was somewhat crushed. And then, my reframe was wait a second. you were selected. This was something that she wanted to hear about. Okay, we moved on, but I still hold it. I just don't talk about it much because I didn't make it to the stage, but I got in line.
But Rob, I think you should tell your inner critic that.
Yeah.
Does your inner critic know that you were on Oprah's agenda? I mean, I think that's the kind of information that our inner critics need to know, because that's a fact.
Yeah.
That is a fact.
Yeah.
That's the truth. And I feel so honored that you shared it with me.
You're the only person I ever talked to. Now, of course, a few other people
now.
are going to hear about it.
Aren't you so glad?
Yep.
That's out. Now everyone knows.
Right. The way of the road warrior. That was what we were going to be talking about. All right. How about last question for you? Give me one or two mentors that have been influential along the way here.
Well, I mean, there's the mentors that I know and the mentors that I don't know. One of the mentor, I love Brene Brown. I love her work. She inspired me. Tanya Geisler, who I mentioned, who is my coach and wrote my forward, and Trisha Bolander, who is also in my book, another coach and mentor. Those three women have been very inspirational in my work. And when I get frustrated, I think, okay, what would Tanya do? What would Trisha do? What would Brene do? Right. And it helps me to trust myself and trust my gut that I know what's best for me.
Good. Yeah. And I don't ask everyone that question, but the type of topic and where you are, and you're very cerebral. I had a feeling, there was a village in there, so good that we put some light on those people. I think they deserve it. It has been delightful talking to you. I hope people run out and get that book, Name, Claim, and Reframe Your Path to a Well-Lived Life, and go to the website, which I'm going to put on my website. But oops, I forgot. What's the website again?
AndreaDeWittAdvisors.com. And
you
can upload the Dental Warriors Toolbox for free. It's pretty cool.
We call that a whiffum in the sales world. That's what's in it for you. So that sounds like a good plan as well. I am grateful to have been able to spend some time with you, and we've just met, but something tells me we're gonna remain friends. I'm really enjoyed the conversation. Love what you've written about, and learned some really good stuff today. So thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
You bet. Well, we'll do it again as well as we can next time, folks. Until then, stay safe.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please rate and recommend it on iTunes, Outcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information on this show and Rob at jollis.com.